this year, the President of India asked the Supreme Court whether the only permissible method for disposal of all natural resources across all sectors and in all circumstances is by the conduct of auctions. This week, a 5-judge constitutional bench of the Supreme Court opined that auction, despite being a more preferable method of alienation or allotment of natural resources, cannot be held to be a constitutional requirement or limitation for alienation of all natural resources. However, when a policy decision is not backed by a social or welfare purpose and precious and scarce natural resources are alienated for commercial pursuits of profit-maximizing private entrepreneurs, adoption of means other than those that are competitive and maximize revenue may be arbitrary and face the wrath of Article 14 of the Constitution. Well, I'm a bit confused about the Supreme Court's response to the questions raised by the presidential reference. As a business reporter, I suppose I should be happy for my constituency. Mandatory auctions would have meant an upheaval in past allocations and an expensive future. But as a citizen, I wonder, in this day and age of political indiscretion, should discretionary allotments be so acceptable? Now, I get that the judiciary should not be deciding economic policy, that the Constitution mandates equality, non-arbitrariness, common good, but it doesn't prescribe auction as the only way to achieve those, and I get that India's problems are less about wrong policy and more about corrupt policy implementation. Yet I can't help but wonder, did the Constitutional Bench do the best it could, or did it play safe? Hello and welcome to a special edition of The Farm. My guests today are the former Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, V.N. Khare, former Attorney General and well-known jurist Soli Sorabji, and Maharashtra's former Advocate General Ravi Kadam. Gentlemen, to all three of you, a warm welcome. Justice Khare, way back in March, you had suggested on this very show that the government should resort to a presidential reference to, in a sense, sort out the confusion arising from the 2G judgment and its comments on auctions being the only way. What do you think this Supreme Court opinion has now done in terms of clarifying the situation? And do you think that it has broken any new ground, or it has simply re-endorsed or reiterated what Supreme Court judgments have said all along?
In fact, when I suggested in March, we wrote on this ground that the review is not the option. Right. Because the scope is very limited. As a Chief Justice and a judge, I hardly find any review petition being allowed. So, in my view, the judgment required a larger bench to consider it.
What do you make, or how do you assess the Supreme Court's response to those questions raised, the predominant or the major question being the issue of auction?
Yes, the response is quite favorable because we are in a welfare state. And the auction is not the only method. Take the welfare measures. Suppose you go for housing for the poor people, go in the health area, in many places that you have to work for the poor and have-nots, not for the not the maximization of earning to the coffer of the government, but we have to see the welfare of the people also in general. And if the auction is resorted to, then that will not going to benefit the poor people, the have-nots and the common people for which the government is meant.
All right. Soli Sorabji, you argued against the maintainability of the presidential reference itself. We'll get to the legalities of that in just a bit. But what do you make of the fact that this Supreme Court opinion with regards to the presidential reference doesn't really break any new ground? In fact, it cites several other Supreme Court opinions that say pretty much the same thing, that the judiciary should not interfere when it comes to economic policy making, and that the Constitution doesn't mandate auctions. It's a preferred route, but not the only route.
I follow that. Actually, there's no new pronouncement, no new law laid down.
Right.
Way back in 2012 in Balfour's case, which I argued as Attorney General, the Supreme Court made it very clear that the economic wisdom of a policy, the court won't go into. The court won't examine the question whether policy A is good and policy B would have been better. Court won't go into the other question whether the policy will be beneficial to the people. These are matters for the executive. But, very important, the court also said, if the policy is patently discriminatory, suppose, for example, hypothetical case, if the allocations are to be made to members of a particular community, or if the means for implementing the policy are vitiated by factors like favoritism, nepotism, and other extraneous considerations, then the court said in Balco that we will certainly interfere. In other words, the wisdom of the policy is beyond the ken of judicial review, but the implementation is certainly not. And if in a given case it is established, of course, not mere allegations, that the means employed were tainted by legal considerations, malafide considerations, the court will interfere. And the judgment has reiterated that. On the contrary, the judgment has gone a bit further in its language and said arbitrary, capricious, various other things. There's nothing new said here.
Ravi Kadam, so we spent months in confusion simply because of a few unintended paragraphs in the 2G judgment, because the Supreme Court in its opinion, this bench, has held that the two-judge bench could not have intended auctions to be the only route, that they've used perhaps, that being the key word, and hence, we don't think that that's what the 2G judgment lays out, that auction is the only route, and then they've gone on to explain why auction is not mandated under the Constitution. So we spent all this confusion simply because of a few unintended paragraphs.
No, I don't think they were unintended paragraphs. They were necessary for the decision in the 2G case. Now, what the Supreme Court did is, when the reference came, the question which was pending and at large in the country was, are these paragraphs, that is paragraphs 94 to 96 of the 2G judgment, do they lay down a constitutional principle that auction is the only route? And that question had arisen, and that required to be answered.
That only arose because of the way some paragraphs in the 2G judgment were phrased, in a sense implying that the two judges on that bench believed that auction was the only method.
Yes.
And the Supreme Court constitutional bench has said, well, that couldn't be what the two judges are implying,
exactly,
because that's not possible. A whole catena of laws would have to be overturned for that to be possible, and hence they could not have implied that.
Yes.
We spent 8 or 9 months in confusion because of words that should not have been there in that judgment.
No, see, there may have been confusion. There could have been a likelihood of confusion in courts when future such cases would come up for consideration. Now, a reference under 143 can be made when a question has arisen and a doubt has already arisen, or a doubt is likely to arise in future.
No, so I get the grounds for 143.
Both these situations required that a reference be made. And as Justice Khare rightly said, the correct method was to make a reference where you would get a complete clarity from a bench of the Supreme Court.
Sorry, there's one point on which I don't agree with Ravi Kadam and Justice Khare. It's this. I don't think a presidential reference lies in order to over about the correctness of a judgment of a court which is at finality. Presidential reference is not an appellate jurisdiction. In a presidential reference, the court cannot sit in appeal or the correctness of a judgment of another bench of the court which is at finality. Therefore, in order to meet this objection, which is my objection, and this is established with another judgment of the Supreme Court at Kaveri tribunals, under 143, you can't ask the court to reconsider its own judgment, which is at finality. But the Attorney General, the resourceful person that he is, he countered, saying, the court, we are not challenging the 2G judgment, we have accepted the 2G judgment, and in proof of his statement, he said, look, we also cancelled the other licenses. In that way, got over the problem about maintainability. But one thing I do wish to emphasize, not only in this matter, but in future, we should be very clear, reference jurisdiction is not appellate jurisdiction. If a certain judgment you think is wrong, they go to the route, 2 judges, 3 judges, 5 judges. The judicial route, not the reference route. In reference, you are not supposed to consider the correctness or otherwise of a judgment of the court, Supreme Court, which is at finality and which is law under 141. Opinion on the reference, we are not too sure whether it's not clear whether it's law under 141. It's entitled to highest respect and all that very well, but it's a moot point whether opinion or reference is a binding judgment under 141.
You see, the argument of the persons who are opposing the maintainability of the reference was that, and their main objection really was, that this reference is really only a means to overrule the judgment in the 2G case. And they relied on the judgment in Kaveri 2, what was known as Kaveri 2, to buttress their point. The Supreme Court made it clear that there is a difference between the decision in a case and the principle of law, the view of law laid down in a given case. The decision in that case attains finality after review, etc. is over. But the view of law that is expressed in a given case can always be reconsidered in a later case. Then the question was, can you do it in a presidential reference or do it in another case with a larger bench? They said that you can do it in a presidential reference, and they gave the example of Keshav Singh's case, which was presidential reference 1 of 1964, where the Constitution bench in the presidential reference said that the view laid down in an earlier case, which was on privileges of the legislature, was inaccurate. In other words, saying that the view was wrong. So this was always there. It was in 1964 the Supreme Court had said it, and the Supreme Court relied on that to say that if necessary in a given case, we can say that the view expressed earlier is wrong. But they didn't say so in this case. They said that they only explained and amplified what was decided.
This is where they say we have the jurisdiction to clarify the ratio of the 2G judgment,
so,
whether we choose to do so or not right now.
Perfectly.
Right?